Okay. Yeah, we'll give it another minute or so.
Or just when you want.
9 months. Wow. Time flies.
Yeah. It's like 9 months in, 9 months out. Like,
wow, it's the same amount. Yeah. So I don't know why I was thinking Cass's baby is older.
Yeah, so Oswin is exactly 8 weeks ahead of Ram.
Oh, okay.
And Rashmi's 2 twins are 4 months younger than Ram. So
okay.
like they're all within 6, which is amazing. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm pinning you.
For each other.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll let people in as they come. Oh, here comes someone. Ooh. Carla, yay!
I know, so exciting to see you.
All right, well, we'll get going here. This is Birth Cafe with Margaret. It meets once a month, and I'm excited about this opportunity of once a month, just kind of coming together, talking about home birth and, bringing questions or concerns or, just becoming more aware of the possibilities of having a home birth. And I'm Margaret, obviously, the host, and I am a birth doula and been running my MLC doula services for a year now. I can't believe it's been a year. It's just like amazing. It's been a great opportunity. And just being around birth and being part of that journey for a pregnant mom or a woman is just like, there's nothing like it. So I feel very honored. Just a little bit, I do one-on-one services and they're anywhere from 2 months to 4 months or beyond. And then I am launching a group program starting May 15th of this month. It will be 4 months for a group program, and it's over again, just going from being overwhelmed, what ifs around home birth to make that transition and have a plan and just really work on the fear and overcoming it and learning more about birth education. So the more we know, sometimes the more comfortable we get with what's the process. And so I'm excited to have that start May 15th of this year. And if you have any questions, just let me know about that. You can book a discovery call to learn more about it. And I put that in the chat. So I'm going to give it over to Divya. Thank you so much, Divya. This is like such an honor. And I really, really thankful that you're here. And you had a home birth 9 months ago. Wow, 9 months, 9 and 9. And so we're just going to hear from you and hear what you have to say about having a home birth.
Yeah, for sure. Like, again, there's nothing like formal or anything that I came prepared with, but I did like spend a little time going back to some of the resources that we had kind of read before we made that decision. And it's just valuable to share that because it's, I feel like the more people that kind of look and feel like who we can relate to, the more that possibility opens up for other women. Like, so I've had at least, I won't name them, but at least 2 or 3 people who are engineers. So I'm an engineer. I work for Apple, and same with my husband. And they were very confused why 2 Bay Area techies were choosing to have a hippie home birth, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what a home birth is like, probably because there is an impression like it's very outdated or kind of going backwards in time. Even my mom, she was like, wait, like our generation even didn't do that. Like, why are you doing it? And we definitely have a lot of doctors in the family who were like super shocked when we said we were going to do a home birth. And I think it definitely raised a few eyebrows in terms of like, are you guys like making the right choice here? Like, have you considered everything? And I think there's also, because we come from like a place that has a lot of like, you know, in our family, like my husband's family especially, there are definitely a lot of doctors. And even here, like a lot of my friends, they were like, well, that's like just, it makes no sense. Like you're really going backwards. And I think one of the things that I could see causes like a lot of fear or hesitancy when it comes to people choosing that is probably also because of how midwifery or doula services here, or doulas in general, are being, I guess, presented. There's a lot of, and that's something, I think this one I just want to name because I think the less of this that happens, the more possible it becomes for people to come towards it. And the main thing there was that it's really hard when people have polarizing, like, you know, people on the medical side will completely shun anything to do with midwifery or, you know, anything around natural birth. And then we found that the opposite was also true when we spoke to a few midwives, and the community that promotes this, they also had a lot of research with the exact opposite. Which was very polarizing, because I feel like when that happens, then it leaves like somebody who's considering it all as options. It's very nerve-wracking because you're like, well, they're saying like all these things that are negative. And so if we had started out with somebody that was like that, I think it would have made it really hard for us to make that choice. But we got really lucky because we found a really wonderful midwife and a really great doula. And what was really great about both of them is that they helped empower us truly by giving us all of the education that was needed. And it wasn't about, with all of that information, what was beautiful about it is that we felt like empowered to make the decision ourselves instead of being told that one is better or one is worse. And it was less about running from the medical system and more about running towards something whole. So that's what made it easy for us, because it really wasn't about, it wasn't about leaving a system to go belong somewhere. It was truly about having all of the choices and not feeling like, you know, compelled to like, it's not like I was, yes, we knew we wanted to have a home birth, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that can make that not possible even for people who plan for it. And, you know, we can talk about a few of those. So I feel like if somebody felt like, oh, if I have to have a home birth, it means that I just can't go back to the hospital. Or if I do, then it means like it's a failure. Then it's almost too much pressure for somebody to choose that path. And somehow, like I said, because of our midwife and my doula, they didn't do it that way. The way they gave us all the information truly made us feel confident that, you know, on that day, in that minute, if what I felt like as a mom or mom to be was that I would feel safer being in a hospital, then that's what you would want to do, because it's truly about giving the mother that freedom and that choice and that, you know, power to be able to birth the way that she wants. And just knowing that, I think just knowing that, you know, we're going to be present and make that choice based on how we're feeling in that moment was actually really freeing, because a couple of them that we spoke to had a really strong, it wasn't anything they said, I think it was how they were being. And I could see why that might, like, say if I think about some of my friends or somebody outside of me, I can see how that could have like, you know, made them a little bit more anxious about choosing it, because it almost comes with so much compulsion to, it's either this or like it's not good, or that it's a failure of any sort. Because medical help is there for when something goes wrong, and that's fantastic, and I'm really grateful it exists, because you want to be able to have that support if something does go wrong. But that said, I can't look at a system that was built to rectify something that has gone wrong to figure out how to thrive from that. For that, I need to look at living systems. For that, I need to look at, and this is in general the difference, I think, between Eastern and Western medicine and or like culture, is that most Western medicine is built out of looking at things that are like pathologically, like what's gone wrong. They look at a sick person and a sick thing or a sick being to figure out what went wrong and hence how to treat it. That is great for, and we've come a far way. And like I said, I'm truly grateful for all the advancements there, because it will help us when I'm sick to kind of start to get better, or like, probably know some things that can prevent it from going there. But if I'm not in that space and I'm really looking at something even more whole, like, as I can guarantee any mother, like, they're truly, given everything that they know, they just want the best that they can do for their child. So if that's the intention, it doesn't matter like how they ended up birthing, because everyone picked the choices that was available to them. And we were just really grateful that we had the resources to expose us to this other whole option, which is that, yeah, like, this is great. If there's nothing wrong with a hospital birth, you'll still have a baby, like everything will go well, and the child will probably have a good life just like we did. And at the same time, if you wanted to truly like go even deeper in that way to figure out what can you do more, like, can you thrive even more, and can you set yourself up as a mother and a baby, like, is there something you could do different that can literally set you off like at a much higher bar than that? If we're thinking about thriving, then I have to look at a system that starts with living systems and sees how that functions. And I think that is where it was super empowering to read all of the information about like midwifery and all the information that my doula shared. And there were a few key things, I think, in what was available to me if I were to do a home birth versus what will be available to me in a hospital birth that really helped. The decision was so simple. I think one of the easiest was just watching a video of somebody who births at a hospital versus at home. That's the first thing. If you watch that, just the process of someone being in their environment and the gentleness of it all, like, it's almost like you kind of melt into it. Not to say that there isn't screaming, it's not about that, but it's how in tune that woman felt within herself. I think just like watching a few videos was like in and of itself, like that was the thing that like started to get us really excited. And the research that we read that started to help us move more in that direction was, if we look at mammals in general, they all don't go birth in a bright lit environment with a lot of people staring at them. And this, I forget exactly where I read, but we had read this thing, or I heard it from either my midwife or my doula, where they said that birth is a celebration, not a medical event. And that also really like spoke to me, because that's true. Like, this is a bringing in of a life, and it's really a celebration, and it's a very personal event, and it's not, unless need be, it doesn't have to be a medical event. So I think that was another thing that also really spoke to us. We were like, yeah, hey Myra, so good to see you. That was another thing too that really made us feel like, wait, like the option that we can actually make it like personal and a celebration as opposed to it being a medical event, like, was also really, really like something that got us excited. And like I said, the environment, the more we read about how mammals birth, they go to a quiet, dark place. Everything is very like, focused, like the mother and the baby have a lot of privacy. It's not something for, like I said, flashlights on you, you're put in a position that is more tuned to help the doctor have a better view of you, as opposed to what is comfortable for the mother to birth in. That was another thing too, just given the fact that like everything that I'd studied and practiced over the last 5 years in my yoga journey had gotten me to a place of having a lot of trust and a lot of like connection with my own body and my own, I think, inner sense of like what my being is capable of, and just being in tune with it. So knowing that, it just felt like I know what it feels like to stand with both my feet, and then like being able to use all of the alignment to open my hips. You ask me to do that when I'm lying down, it's going to be really, really hard. So just the fact that I've seen videos where they've put this woman's legs up like this and they're telling her to push, I feel like I want to give that woman a hug. Man, it's literally the worst position you can have that mother birth in. And yet like, it's like it's set up. And we watched, like I said, beautiful thing about my doula was that she sent me a number of resources, including documentaries and stuff that we watched. One of them is called, it's on Netflix, it's called The Business of Being Born. It's a fantastic documentary and it's beautiful. And in that, when we watched the science, like the researcher who said like how the very first time they came up with it was literally because that position was more convenient for the doctor to have a better view of the baby and what's coming out through the birth canal. So it wasn't looking at what was comfortable for the woman. And I know that just from my own body's practice, right? And not shockingly enough, I did give birth standing. So because it was genuinely the most, like, gravity was in my favor. Like, I think intuitively, what works for your body. So it wasn't even one of those things I just knew as information. I had an embodied feeling of how much power I can feel to open my hips when I'm able to ground my feet and like draw all that strength. So yeah, I think just knowing that, oh, when I'm in a hospital, it has gotten a lot better. Like, I think now people who have doulas and midwives can really write out a really good birth plan and request for the environment to be like more conducive, where they can be given the freedom to kind of move the way that they want. But just knowing that at home we can control, like he literally, like, my son was born where I'm sitting right now. I kind of picked that spot intentionally. Like, it was on my yoga mat, it was in this spot, the mat that I've practiced for years. It was in our bedroom. And it was beautiful because we had the environment set up exactly like how we wanted. There were sounds of chants that we've listened to over the years that have spiritual significance to us. And there was a flute that flute music or something like that was playing also in the background. Everything was very quiet. And our midwife and doula and her assistant, they were all very respectful. They didn't, unless there was any need, they didn't interfere with the process at all. So it was just me, my husband, and baby trying to work with one another to see how he could be out. And it was just amazing because it didn't involve me. Again, like, if a mother feels safer taking the medication that she needs, and that's the route she needs to go for her to feel empowered, she should absolutely do it. And just like that is okay, the opposite is okay too, is that in the hospital, I think my choice of asking people to not interfere is that much lesser. So if need be, our transfer hospital was 4 minutes from here, and we knew that. So, and my midwife, like I said, there is probably this myth that, like, if you're having a home birth, it's like this, I don't know, you're a hippie smoking pot giving birth in your backyard. I don't know if that's what people think, but that's the image people have, I think, in the Bay Area. But the minute you can tell them, no, actually, that's not, that person has, and there is another documentary by Ina May Gaskin too, which was hilarious. I found that super funny and also extremely valuable and educational, because in that documentary also she talks about how when she interviewed the people that were laughing in the medical system about midwifery, she remembers asking a group of interns and like people that were, I think, practicing medicine in the OB department. And she asked how many of them had been present at an actual home birth or just at a live birth that is unassisted. The answer was 0. So this goes to what I was saying earlier, is that you can't think of how something can thrive by looking at something that was sick or that needed help. You can learn how to help something that is sick by looking at that. But as a mother and as a baby that is healthy and well, which is more than 80 to 90% of women who know how to birth naturally, because the medical system has been around only for the last like less than a century. Before that, if we got to 7 billion by women birthing unassisted, it has got to be in my body's memory how to do that. Like, so I felt like I got to give myself a shot at experiencing this. And again, like, I wasn't against, if I needed any kind of medical assistance, I would have asked for it. Or if my midwife, she's educated in like, she's smart enough to like, she kept checking to see there are different markers that she knows will require medical assistance. And if any one of those things had happened, she would have made sure that she considers my safety and my baby's safety first. So it wasn't, like I said, like this, I don't know, this ancient picture of this old lady with a lot of gray hair, probably with glasses, and I'm saying that just to tease, who's like completely not smart. And, you know, that is not how midwives are or doulas are. There is enough education, enough certification, and enough practicum, which is probably the most important, that they have gone through watching women give birth at home, which is far more valuable than someone who's trained to only give women like certain set of medications for them to birth in a certain way. And I felt like, oh, this is not at all the picture people paint like outside. Like, they won't even know much about home birth, but they'll just say something about it that's really scary. And I think the minute we started to like just get all the information and look at it, it became really apparent why would we not choose something that is thriving for me and my baby. So the environment, again, this was like the second thing, knowing that at home we have a full control over the environment that I would be birthing in, and that it would be so much more gentler if everything like were to go the way that it was supposed to, was a big, like even now when we see my son's birth certificate and it says the address of birth, like, that it's our home, it just makes us smile so much, because it's amazing to think that he was born right here, like, in this home. So that, I don't think it's almost irreplaceable, that feeling to know that that happened. And the couple of other things that, again, like the minute we started to learn and understand this, the decision was just there. Like it wasn't even something we thought or put in too much thought into. And that had to do with one, how one intervention leads to the other when you start to step into the hospital. Again, it's unfortunate that a lot of the medical system is built or set up in a way that is not, I wouldn't say all of it is like that, but a decent chunk of it is built around how insurance and the business of it is set up over here, as opposed to it being more conducive. Say if a woman's labor is taking 30 plus hours, there will come a point within a few hours where just because it's a hospital and it's staffed and they want it to happen, they will start to say things like the baby's starting to be in distress, or that, and any mother just wants the best for their child. So if you tell a mother that, I think the baby's like, whatever, heart rate's dropping, you've been in labor for X number of hours, we think your baby's in distress, we'll have to do an emergency C-section. What sane parent would choose anything other than that? Because they really just want the best for their child, like, and they're trying to keep them safe. So we just looked at the rates of C-section in cities, both my home city and in the Bay Area, and it was exorbitantly high compared to all of the United States. I think New York City and California are pretty high up there in that number. And that had to say something about how much of it is because of the place we live in and just how much quickly they want to move through things, as opposed to being patient, I think, with the woman and giving her, her body and her journey like a little bit of space. And the other thing was about, one intervention leading to the other, that I think if people want to learn more about it, really that documentary speaks all to it. So they should really, lean on that resource. And the other thing was about late cord clamping. So I'm a vegetarian, and when my placenta came out, my midwife was so shocked because it was so rich and so red that she was very surprised that a vegetarian diet person could have such a healthy placenta. But the more important thing about that in late cord clamping was that when the baby comes out, its lungs are just starting to beat. That's when it's only born with like about, the lungs are beginning to function when it takes its first breath, right? So it's only after that 50% of the blood like would start to drain from the placenta into the baby. But because of, like I said, again, cases of hemorrhages and things like that, and to keep things more efficient, people like cut off the clamp like literally when the baby's out, and that leaves nearly 50% blood volume in the placenta. But I worked so hard, that thing grew out of my own body. And why would I not give my baby all of that blood and have him thrive? And for us, I think by the time they cut the cord, it was at least 3 hours into my birth. And the cord was white. By that point, it had stopped pulsating, all of the blood had drained. And it was a very different experience. There was no need to rush and try to do any of that thing. And just the amount of benefits, like, again, I'm a vegetarian, and someone on a vegetarian diet, not having the baby be anemic or like come out with any kind of deficiency in hemoglobin count, like all of that number is like pretty scarce. Like they'll immediately tell you to do things. But so far, like we just did his 9th month visit, my baby's hemoglobin count is fantastic. And he's, again, like this is all looking back. I wouldn't have known this at the time I made my choices based on information. Now I'm just looking at the other side of it to see how much of this is actually panning out or giving us what we thought this experience would give us. And yeah, his blood is really healthy, and he's got like really good hemoglobin count, and majority of that iron and stuff, like I can't but imagine did come from his original blood volume. Because imagine you gave up 50-60% like of the blood that he could have otherwise had, and then expect him to catch up that quickly, but for 9 months, he had that, like, or like, the placenta was performing what it had to do, keep his organs going. So that was one of the things. And there's a lot of research about the golden hour, or the first like 2 to 3 hours of time with the baby. And that was the other big reason I think we chose. And especially in that business of being born, there is this scientist, German scientist, that talks about how when one intervention starts, how it starts to escalate. But what it starts to do is when they start to treat the woman's pain with medication, it's robbing her of, the pain is still there. All it's doing is telling my nervous system that there isn't pain. So it's like you're taking away my sensitivity, then you're telling me to push. So more women end up tearing a lot more because of being given Pitocin and other things, because literally they've taken away their ability, epidural, sorry, in this case, but they've taken away the ability to, feel anything. And then they're asking them to push through it. So of course, then they're going to hurt themselves more because they didn't have a sensation to tell them that that is not working. But in the lack of all of that, their natural body's opiates would have kicked in. Like if they allowed the labor to progress at its natural pace, it's such an intricate system. I can't even begin to, I don't think everyone's understood all of its mechanisms, but there's a book called Gentle Birth. Why can't I suddenly, I'm blanking out on the name, but I think it's called Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. Yeah, Sarah Buckley. And there is a whole PDF also that she has about the third stage of labor and the interventions that come with it. But it clearly speaks to just how freaking intricate that whole machinery is, how many hormones your body and the baby's body are exchanging constantly to progress the labor in a way that is ideal for them both. And adding something from outside messes with all of it in a way that you can't just like introduce one thing that clips off a part of it and then look at the whole and expect it to be the same. But if you let the natural process take its course, it's magical. It's something that I've never, like, I don't think I could ever imagine having experienced something that was both that. I think the intensity of it is easily the highest I've ever felt in my entire life. But at the same time, the reason that happens is that it's like you're scaling Mount Everest or like a really hard hill. And all of that hormonal balance ends with the second the baby's born. It ends with that release of oxytocin, that release of hormones, that's that love hormone that you and your baby get to exchange. And it's doing two things. Just on a physical level, firstly, it flush. I think the mother's blood is like, it's why most people don't remember how it was to birth. You know how moms say, like, if they ever remember like how painful it was, they probably would never do it. You know why they don't remember is because oxytocin produces, it's called love hormone for a reason, because it literally doesn't make you feel any of that pain, even though the pain happened and you don't actually have the trauma at that point. That's why they won't remember it. So for the mother on a physical level, it's giving her and the baby, not just the mother, but both, because the baby has also gone through a little bit of a ride before he or she is able to get like birth themselves out, right? So they've also kind of scaled that peak with you. So when both of you are on the other side, just like how you would feel when you're at the top of a mountain, your body on a cellular level will remember that you went through that and you could do it, and you've experienced the release of oxytocin on the other side of it. So for me, that on like so many different levels, like really spoke to me, because on this, again, like just on the physical level, our body remembers. And then on a spiritual level, oh, sorry, looks like it's trying to say I'm raising my hand. On a spiritual level also, we retain cellular memory like this. So the amount of oxytocin we've experienced like that, for the mother, it's the portal to literally experience a level of love that she's never experienced in her lifetime. And for the baby, it's the baseline for how much, if say my kid did nothing more to spiritually grow, that is the baseline for how much he thinks he's worthy of love, because of that release of body chemistry and like release of oxytocin and that set of hormones, and like what baseline that sets. So it's like, why would I want to give up on an opportunity in a spiritual portal that's like this for myself and my baby? Because again, like if anything was necessary, we could have interfered with it. But why would I not even start with giving ourselves the best shot and seeing how things go. So I think, and that German scientist, the reason I bring that up from the documentary is that there is, again, like a sentence from the documentary that just after that, we both paused, and me and my husband, I remember it took us a second to digest that, where he said how like he doesn't know if humanity can continue to survive if we keep taking away, like if that oxytocin level is the ability for humans to feel loved. And we're in a generation now that's suffering more and more with mental disorders, feeling of unworthiness. And we've had the most number of suicides in the age group of like children in this generation or in the last 20, 30 years than we've ever had in the entire history. And he says how, if I don't know, as humanity, if we can continue to survive, if we keep meddling with this process and start to produce humans that are naturally prone to think that they're not loving or like not loved. And that really like touched a raw nerve, I think, for us, because I can see how some of that, just from everything we've been studying and working together with, like it just immediately spoke to me, where I was like, holy shit, this is, that's not something to be taken lightly, right? And it's also a portal for me, it's a portal for my baby. And if we can, why would we not want to scale that mountain together and experience that on the other side of it? And I think that was another reason why we knew that in the hospital, the need for them to intervene would be that. Again, not to say that you can't say that all out clearly. If you needed to be at the hospital and you have to do that in the birth plan, you can request it to be as uninterrupted as possible. And again, if it's between your baby or the mother being safe versus having that support, God bless that exists, because otherwise mortality rate for both mothers and babies before all of that medical improvements came was that much lower. So I'm super grateful for it. That said, like we can use it when we need it, not the other way around. I don't need to use it preemptively because I'm afraid that birth has to be a medical event and it's not a natural, celebratory, family, private, event. So yeah, I know I said a lot, but then, like I said, there was just so many amazing things I learned during that time about just the human body, its ability, the things that, and this is the last thing I'll say, because this was another thing that just like my heart broke for all of the women to which this might have happened. With nobody tells them that a C-section involves like cutting open 8 layers in your body to bring your baby out. And if a mom had to go through that, like, again, God, I really hope she has like all the love and support to like survive that on the other side. And again, the babies and mothers I know still will have a strong bond, nothing to take away from that. The data point that when we saw, and then we see how in some places they actually promote C-section because they think that that's actually a way. They promote it like the mother has choice because they're saying it as, oh, you can control when you give birth at, but they take away all of the information that is, they're giving them half-assed information is what I'm trying to say. They don't tell them that it's a major abdominal surgery. And so for monkeys who are just literally like one in evolution, they're one stage behind us, right? Say for a monkey, you actually do what a C-section is, which is sedate it, cut open its abdomen, take out the baby, stitch her back up, and then she wakes up from the sedation. She will leave the baby and walk away. So she literally does not know that that is her child. We're not very far off evolutionarily from them. So we've heard such a big percentage of postpartum depression in women because you've sedated her. You're telling her that she has true choice because she's getting to pick the day, because any person is just going off of the information they're seeing, right? So they're like, yeah, like this is cool because I get to control like when I give birth, and this is just awesome that I can have it my way. I don't have to experience no pain. They talk about that too, but that pain is in such a small, narrow way, not about the larger pain. And they promote it that way, and then women just feel like, yeah, it's the right thing to do. And no offense, like, if someone had to go through that, even, and there are certain cases where that's actually necessary to keep the mom and baby safe, which is, again, I'm grateful that it exists. But for the proportion that it wasn't necessary and that was what they were made to believe is good for them, it's like you took away what could have made me feel like I'm capable of anything. Because that oxytocin release I spoke about, it does 2 things. The cellular memory is not just about the love hormone that gets released, but it's also about knowing that you could go through that hardship without any, like, your body will remember that you could do that on your own. And that cellular memory sticks with us, because later on, mothering is probably one of the hardest things, not probably, definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done. And in times of doubt, so many times, like that moment will come back to me. That, listen, you could do that, and you can understand your baby, and you will figure this out. Because at a moment where we couldn't even talk to each other or see each other, we figured out how to birth one another. So there are so many moments when it gets really hard, I don't even have to think about it, because that thing is there in me to believe that I think I can. And again, that bond is there, that strong bond to feel like. So when I've heard moms say, like, I don't even feel like I'm, that I gave birth, something happened, like I woke up and suddenly my belly was like all flat and I had a baby in my hand. Like, my heart breaks for it, because they robbed them of one of the most, and worse, society then also expects mothers to be this phenomenal, like, superhuman, that you're just supposed to do everything like perfectly and you have to be happy. How can you be a sad mother? Fuck, sorry for the word here, but it just the thought of how society took away the opportunity from her for having, they didn't give her encouragement and support to do it that way so she could feel empowered in her birth. Firstly, they did that, and then they also placed the expectation that you should be bloody good at what you're doing. How is she going to build the confidence if she wasn't even given the opportunity to scale that mountain? How is she supposed to believe that she can do this? So yeah, that thing just really broke my heart. Like, when I could piece that portion together, it just made me feel like, yes, if it's the difference between keeping the mom or the baby safe, and that is what they needed, again, hallelujah, I'm grateful it exists for that subset. But I doubt the entire 40 some exorbitant percentage of C-sections that happen in the Bay Area or any other major city is all because of that was needed. Because I think the statistics is like more than 92% of women can have normal births. So it doesn't add up, is what I'm saying. So these were, I think, all of the reasons why we really just wanted to start at home. We were not attached to it. That's where all of it is going to happen, because again, that's far beyond like our control. But we prayed for it. We supported ourselves for it. And I'm just really, really thankful to God, universe, that that's what we got to have. And yeah, that we're on the other side of it, healthy and happy. Thank you. Oh, he's so cute.
Thank you. It's really interesting. I just a figure that I just learned recently that in this generation, C-sections are up by 500% in this generation, and it's just like, wow. And again, I totally agree with you. What you're saying is that when it's necessary for the safety of the mom or the baby or both, then yes, we need to have the C-section. We need medical attention, and we need it. And I'm so thankful for it. But if 80 to 90% of births can be done naturally, then we should also really encourage women to take that opportunity. And there's like so many benefits. And I mean, just the sheer empowerment of that, just that alone is like huge. Like
until I told you like a half of the things in terms of how safe of a worldview that child ends up having, because in the first 5 minutes they weren't poked 500 times for a blood test or prodded or given a bath. None of that is necessary. They just need to be skin to skin with the mother, knowing that what they've come into is a safe world. But that is available to me if I were to go to a hospital. And the first prick that my baby had was on his 5th day for his newborn screening. And I cried when my midwife came over to do that, because how she did it was, she firstly she came, she spoke to my baby, she held his hand, she'd got a little warmer to warm his hands, because babies tend to have cold hands. And if you try to prick a newborn baby, literally no blood will come up. So they will prick like 5 or 6 times just to get 1 drop of blood. Plus you've cut out the clamp, which means he's he or she has like 50% of the blood supply in their body. But this was 5 days after she came and spoke to my baby, warmed his hand, and she let me nurse him while she did the prick. And my baby didn't even as so much as wink. And it's not just that one, like, because the first time he had that prick, it was so gentle. And even when she needed more drops of blood, she wasn't in a rush to poke more. We wiggled his hand, we moved him around, we lifted him so that blood could slowly, gravity can help it come down. And then we took more drops of like blood for her to send off for the newborn screening. And I cried so much because I was so touched by how much care and thoughtfulness went into not causing early trauma to that baby. And again, now in hindsight, we don't know if, again, I can't tell you if this is why that is the case, but so far my kid is 9 months, which means he's gotten a couple of shots, and we're doing a very nice like delayed vaccination as well, because that's another whole like topic. But there hasn't been a single shot so far. Sometimes my husband jokes, he's like, I think we have a psychopath, because he does not like feel like, because my child has not cried at a single doctor's appointment when he got a shot. Oh. And again, it's not that I'm not saying that there's no way for me to prove that this is connected to that, but I do remember my midwife in several occasions when we used to tell her things that about his comfort or degree of like how he's doing and things like that, where she repeatedly mentions, yeah, his worldview is really that of safety and like a lot of love and feeling really cared for and loved, just because of how he came out and how his first few days were. Because that first few hours and first few days, like, or hours especially, their first entry into the world, it leaves a huge imprint on them. And there's definitely research backing up like how much like NICU babies and things like that they have a lot of trauma that they overcome later. And not that any of it is not course correctable. Like we can obviously like undo so much of that with the love that you can give them like after. If that wasn't necessary and you can have this, why would I not choose it? And it was funny because one of my friends, I actually could say that to her. She was like, you're an engineer. Why are you doing home birth? I'm like, I'm doing that because because I'm an engineer and or educated. I've educated myself more so that I know that this option exists. It's actually because of it, not because it's not the opposite. Like, oh, you're an engineer or a techie, you shouldn't choose this because that's a dumb decision to make. It's like, no, it's actually the exact opposite. I'm sensible and I want to educate myself fully, or at least more than I think what's shown to me otherwise. So I can pick an option that's, more holistic. Yeah.
I'm so loving hearing from you. I'm like, you should have a documentary. I guess oh gosh, I'm really touched, and
thank you.
Don't have babies, don't plan to have babies, and I'm loving being here, like hearing and celebrating life with you as you talked about. And I was struck early on, and you ended with, you came back around to this point multiple times, is the education. Like once you got information, the decision was easy for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, information. Like give people information and let them be in choice in their lives. And
right.
That's too easy. Too much like right.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's the more people, I feel like that's why even when Margaret asked, I was like, I'd absolutely be happy, because I'm really grateful for whoever chose to give me the data and the information that they chose to give. Or any other woman that I can see and feel like, hey, like, because we're all human and we think of ourselves as being like something or somebody. And I know our common teacher, at least for most of us here, Daniela, she talks a lot about like being that possibility. Like if you're that only person who has these unique set of things, and say because nobody else has done that, like if I sign myself out of something that was authentic to me, then I'm robbing that possibility for, say, somebody else that feels like, oh, but I'm this very smart, like engineer, that I shouldn't. If I do this, it means that I'm an idiot. And like all the narratives that go with that thing, like I feel like you'll become that possibility if you just like presented all of that as an information and as a data point, and then let the mother and they'll choose. But what we were shocked about is that till we went and spoke to a midwife or doula, nobody, this is not what you get out there. Like, you just don't like hear about this kind of stuff. I think that's the thing that we were so shocked about, like, was that, whoa, like, yeah.
Yeah, Divya, thank you. Sorry, thank you so much for sharing. It was really empowering and amazing to hear everything, because I had a totally opposite birth. And I thought I was informed enough, which I was not. And definitely, if I come to have another baby in the future, I don't know, it's like it's an amazing experience to, like, it's amazing to hear everything you said, and inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
I love the fact that you brought in the scientific information. You know, that's stuff that's not shared, you know, the not cutting the cord too soon,
Yeah.
and giving the baby a chance to bond. Beautiful, very beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
No, absolutely. And I'm grateful, like I said, to my doula and midwife who gave us all of that information, because again, like, there's nothing wrong in somebody coming and questioning that. In fact, like, if anything, like, what I would request, and I said this at the very beginning, and now that more of you are here, I'll say this again, that one of the things that I could see as a gap in the midwifery and doula community is them shying away from people coming in with any sort of judgment or question and asking something, them not shying away from answering that with real data. And because obviously somebody that comes up like, how do you know that works? Like, it's hard because it's really judgmental, and it's very easy to get triggered by it and be like, you know what, like, go have your hospital birth. Like, it's very easy to like say that and do that. And one of the things we did see, unfortunately, like I said, in that community, was that there's also a lot of, just like one side is completely shutting down the other. There was the opposite too, where with the midwifery or like doula community, there was also a very, you know, but hospital birth is just terrible, or like, but that's not the point though. The point is about education and empowerment for the woman, so that if she feels safe doing it, because you can still have a hospital birth and now put down all of these things in a birth plan. Because I do know like another friend who, like I said, again, everyone that wants to have a home birth also, it doesn't end up happening that way. Because for example, you have to be between like weeks 36 or I think 34 and 38 for you to be able to have a home birth, because anything before is considered preterm that requires medical attention. Anything after that is considered also like a longer or I think post full term or something like that. But so there are other things that, so I had one of my dear friends, in fact, some of you know her, Sanjana, like she fully was ready. She was in wanting to have a home birth, and the week before her 34th week, or exactly, I think 36 to 40, sorry. But in her 34th week, like her labor started sooner, but God bless, she had an amazing midwife and doula, because they were able to still put down all of this in her birth plan. Though it was in the hospital, she birthed like how she wanted, in the pose that she wanted. And she got that 30 seconds to chant whatever she wanted to chant to her baby. And, you know, like you can still get as much of it as possible in that environment too. So I think my really like one of my wishes for midwifery and doula services in general is for them to like not, again, like we'll have to resolve that trigger and that shame for the opposite. If not, then the same thing's going to happen. Like people will reject one or the other information. But if they're, because for me, that's what I found really freeing about my midwife, was that she didn't resist anything to do with the hospital. She was only telling me, hey, if this is what you want to do, here's all the things you need to know. And this is what I'll make sure to keep you safe. And she gave me, and any random question we would have, she would pull out the resources for that and email that to us so we can educate ourselves. So she pointed us in the direction of all of the resources so we could, because that is what it's about, right? The whole point of midwifery is to have the mother feel empowered about what she's doing. And they did that without making us feel like forced to go in one direction or the other. And I think that's really freeing. It'll actually help more people come to the midwifery side of things if they were given that choice and freedom to say, hey, like, you do all of this 9 months. At the end of that day, when that day arrives and the time arrives, if you feel like, hey, I want to birth in a hospital, then that's what we'll do. Just saying that, I think, just gives so much freedom to the mother to not feel like, oh shit, but at the end of this, like, I have to birth at home, because if not, like, I'm a failure. Like, yeah, like that pressure, I think, kind of also deters people from choosing that. So really, one of my hopes is that, because I can't do anything with the hospital system there, it's too out there. But I, knowing the community that we're all part of, we can definitely help one another know that we can resolve that trigger, resolve that shame, so we can approach it with curiosity. Like, they'll be like, oh, why should I do late thought campaign? How does that help? Great question. Let me go find out like what that does. If you approach it that way, then it's their choice. They read that, and I can't imagine why anybody would say no to that. Like, and it's okay if they did too. I think it's all of the things that we've practiced in yoga. It's the non-attachment. It's not wanting to control somebody else's outcome. It's not getting triggered by it. And yeah.
Thank you. That was also very helpful, because I get very, I really think that, well, obviously I think home birth is the way to go, right? And so, but I also, because of my medical background, realize that at times medical is really important, and to help someone feel safe. And so sometimes it's a little hard of a balance for me in the aspect, because I really want people to hear and see and know that they have the opportunity to have a really safe home birth, and that can be really safe, because I've been in the medical field. So I know how they manipulate, and I know how they get coerce people into doing things, because they're coming from a different mindset, right? They're thinking of it coming from someone's sick, it's a medical condition. And pregnancy and birth is not that way. And so it's a really hard balance for me, because it's like I see both sides. And it's like I'm promoting myself as a home birth doula. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe that's not necessarily good, because I understand at some points a medical, and if a mom's going to feel much safer in a hospital, then that's where she needs to birth. Right. So
you're still there to like empower her, know that you'll be, in fact, like, in that moment, the mother won't have the ability to think. But if you could be the advocate there, when say somebody comes in and say, hey, we need to give her this because this is happening, you can advocate for saying, actually, she doesn't want that.
Yeah.
What a gift that is, right? Because that is also someone who's helping that mother have as much of an empowered birth, even though it's in a system that has so much resistance to it. So I feel like, for me, like I said, I'm grateful that we didn't need to do that and it happened at home. But like I said, I've had a couple of friends for who it ended up being in the hospital, but they did have the support where they could literally like send them, hey, this is what the doctor's saying, what should I do? And the team would respond back like on a thread saying, tell them, can they give you this as the option? Or like they educated them with, no, you have the right, and to inform them about the rights that you have. To say that actually, no, like you can say no to a whole bunch of things. So I feel like, that is probably the bigger value of having a midwife and a doula, irrespective of where I end up birthing, to make me feel like somebody's on my side, advocating for me and supporting me in the way that I want. Because even one of the questioners, I remember when our doula met us when we were 4 or 5 months, she asked us, she didn't say, oh, if you feel scared, these are the things you should do. She gave me and my husband this questionnaire to fill out that was about, what are your strengths and what can you see as something that your husband, like what is his strengths, or what makes you feel safe? The question was very pertinent to me. So it was amazing, because I was like, it even brought me and my husband closer together in that process, because on that day when that comes, like you can't think about it then. But having talked together previously, and she even asked, like, for example, like what would, if you're going through like a really hard moment, what is it that you might need to hear or see or be shown for you to feel like you can get through it? So it was very personal. It wasn't like, oh, this is what works for everybody, so you're going to do this. It was more like, so for me, for example, like I told her all this, like, you can do it, like, hurrah, like, I'm like, no, it does not work for me. Give me a moment, just probably something very gentle, like hold my hand, remind me that I can breathe, or like that I've got this, like something very, like, so she said that that's different. Like there are people who say, no, like scream in my face, tell me I can do this. She's had clients that were like that, but that was really amazing to know, because again, it's about giving that woman that choice for her to know what is safe for her and what feels, supported for her. And that support is different for each one of us. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I need to go to give a class, but I just want to say, like, one of the greatest things that I'm taking from what Divya said, it's about her doula and her midwife not really like demonizing the hospital birth, because I know, and that's one of those things that maybe push people away, like me, people who come from a culture that in Brazil, like they're more like C-sections than natural birth. And then hospital, it's amazing. Doctors, they know everything. And then you come here and you hear like, no, they are the worst, it's bad. And then instead of like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it pushes you away. So I feel like during my pregnancy, I heard more about like from doulas and midwives, whatever I saw out there, it was more like during my classes, more negative things about hospital than the positive things about home labor and home birth and things like that. So I think what you said, it like their approach, your team, like their approach was great. Like giving you the information about both, right? You can educate without putting all your judgments there,
yeah,
right? So educating you, showing the information is here. What do you want? Like,
how can I support you? Yeah,
how I can support you. And yeah, like now, like if I have another baby, I highly consider a home birth. Totally different story. But definitely this approach is like the best. So thank you for sharing, Divya.
Thank you. And good luck with the class. Thank you for coming to support, though. It really means a lot.
Thank you, Margaret, for this space. It's amazing.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your experience, Divya. That was beautiful. Beautiful. And I have seen that documentary, The Business of Being Born. My first labor, I had epidural and everything because it wasn't progressing like how Margaret was saying. My water broke at a certain early time in the morning. I went to the hospital. Nothing was happening. No contractions, slowly dilating, nothing. It was like 3 p.m. They're like, okay, we got to do something. Like,
Exactly.
this baby's going to go into stress. And I was just like, okay, whatever you feel like it's needed. So they started giving me Pitocin. 3 hours later, nothing. So then another dosage of Pitocin. And then again, nothing. And then another one. And by the third dose, those contractions were not normal. I was like, wow, where did they all come from? It was like back to back, no time for breathing in between the contractions. It was just not how I wanted it. And they're like, okay. And at that point, it was just too much for my body. And I just was like, they saw that I was just, clamping up, and they're like, okay, we're just, you should get the epidural now because that'll help you relax and that'll help you open. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess, again, I wasn't informed and everything. So when I got the epidural, finally I relaxed. And then they're like, okay, it'll probably be till the next, couple hours or tomorrow. So we're going to check out, my doctor was like saying goodnight. And then he came back one more time to check. And then he's like, oh crap, she's crowning. She's crowning. And I only had the epidural for like half an hour. So I was crowning. And so they're like, okay, well, we got to do this. And I didn't like that I couldn't feel. That was the point right there where I was like, I've seen and heard like, moms feeling, and baby coming, and like I didn't feel anything, and they were yelling at me, push, less in your face and more down there. And I was just like, but I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything at all. My legs are dead. They're just like, I didn't feel nothing. So they're like putting pressure. They're like 2 nurses on my belly. They're like, here, do you feel that? I'm like, no, I'm completely numb. Like, I don't feel anything. And it was just kind of scary because they're like, am I pushing? I'm pushing. I feel like I'm pushing over my face.
It is helping you numb out, and then they're angry at you for numbing out. That's just, it's not kindest thing to a mother.
Yeah, I remember getting yelled at, and they're like, bye, Carla. And I just remember getting yelled at, and I was just like, well, what do you want me to do? Like I can, like, you know, so like everyone was just there up in my space. I felt cramped. Finally gave birth, and I threw up. As soon as the baby came out, I threw up because the epidural, I started breaking up like in hives and everything. It was just not fun. And it was at that point where I said, you know, I need to do my research. And that's when I came across that movie or documentary, The Business of Being Born, and my eyes opened. I started researching and looking more into everything. So everything you were talking about, I'm like, oh yes, if people more. I mean, I know the hospital's there for emergencies and everything, and they have the place, and they're not bad. But definitely felt like, you know, more women need to be given the information and power to choose, you know, and to learn to trust the process, you know, being a mom and giving birth. So baby number 2 and 3, there was no intervention. I did give birth at the hospital, but it was more like I came with my birth plan, and I was like, here's my birth plan. I want to play my music.
That's what I'm saying. That's great. Like, no mom should be made to feel like if they gave birth at the hospital, that's lesser either. Just like the mom who gave birth at home should feel like she did something lesser, because everybody did the best that they could.
Yeah, and I really wanted a home birth, but again, back when I was having my babies, I didn't hear about home birth. I didn't know anything about doulas.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your thing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody for coming. And the next one is 6/6 at 6. So next birthday. So thank you everybody for coming. And Divya, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Divya.
yeah, so thank you.